I want to talk a little bit about getting your data prepared for import, because I think I didn't give you guys quite enough information if you haven't used Excel or something like that before. So I'm actually going to be using LibreOffice on here. Everything that you can do with LibreOffice, you can do in Excel, as far as I know. And it might just be a little bit different, like some of the stuff is under a data tab instead of a data menu item or something like that. But if you can't find it, then let me know or do a Google search or whatever. So first thing that I'm actually going to do is I'm opening up the CSV file. I've got a little, just a little tester demo file here. Just a little thing that I downloaded from somewhere or another, which is just, it's not even like big data itself. It's like a randomization, just kind of like a proof of concept or something like that for data. So anyway, I've got this CSV file open up, and I'm opening up in a text editor just so I can see what the delimiter is. Like I'm seeing semicolons between the different fields here in a row, and that's at least reasonably common. CSV stands for comma separated values, as I recall, but it doesn't have to be commas. It can be spaces is very common. Semicolons probably a little less common, but it certainly exists, as you can see here. So, but I'm not going to do anything to it here. I'm just going to make note of what the delimiters are. In this case, it's a comma. And that's really all I'm going to do here. So let me go ahead and move over. Now I'm going to be using the LibreOffice, which again is the free version of an Office suite. Also, OpenOffice, LibreOffice, and OpenOffice, as far as I know, are exactly the same thing. And they're both free. So I've already opened this up here. In LibreOffice, you can open up a CSV file directly. If you're in Microsoft Excel, then it won't be able to, or it might not be able to, in which case you open up a new spreadsheet and go to the Data tab up top. And then the very first item in the icons right underneath that should say something like Get Data. I think it's called Power Query or something goofy like that. And then choose from text, legacy, and then you can select your CSV file. And then you just go through a little wizard. You have to tell it what the delimiters are. Like in this case, I would have to tell it to look for semicolons to separate values, fields, that sort of thing. But in this case, LibreOffice, I can just open this up directly, but I still need to tell it what it calls the separator options. This is the delimiter. I just want to make sure that a semicolon is checked here. I probably do not want spaces because I've got spaces in the information, the data itself. So as long as semicolon is checked, I'm good to go. And I click on OK, and it opens it up here. So typical spreadsheet. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do a file and save as, and I will call this books abridged or something like that. I like using hyphens in my file names. This is an old web development thing. And then go ahead and click on save just so I've got something else. It may give me a little warning. Yes, I want to use the CSV format still. Good to go. So a couple of things right off the bat. The first thing that I told you guys to do is to remove any unwanted columns. So that part of it's really simple. No matter whether you're in Excel or whatever, you just go up, select the column, do a right click, and then go down to delete columns or delete in Excel. I don't think created at and updated at, these sound like entry logs for a different database. Don't really want those in mine. If I wanted them, I certainly would want to make them on my own and not just import someone else's old data. So I'm going to get rid of that. Copyright, again, this is just kind of placeholder data here, but I don't know why there's an author versus a copyright. I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of that. Some other stuff like stock, I don't even know what that means, but it sounds important. Yeah, maybe I want it to, so I'm going to go ahead and keep it. So let me say a couple of other things about the way that your CSV file might look when you get it here into a spreadsheet app. First of all, you may or may not have a column that could correspond to an ID, like an auto-incrementing primary key column in your database. If you don't, then I would go ahead and make one. So to do that, you just right-click and just insert column or columns before, and then give it a title and so on. So it just makes things easier. It's certainly, if it doesn't have one and you forget to put one in, it'll certainly work without it. You just have to pay a little bit more attention when you're migrating the data in, when you're importing the data in. But I do recommend, like in my case, I've already got something that corresponds to that primary key ID, but I think it's a good idea just to go ahead and get rid of all this stuff in this column. I'm going to delete all, okay, and just get rid of it, because my primary key is going to be auto-incrementing, right? So I don't want to feed it value. Now I could feed it values. In this case, it was just 1 through 10, in which case it just maps right in. It's perfectly fine. But what if you have like odd numbers in here, numbers that jump around, or maybe some repeating numbers? You certainly would not want to do that. Now, I think that the simplest blanket umbrella solution is to go ahead and have a column, but then just get rid of all the content in it. And then if you have auto increment on your primary key in MySQL, then it'll just add those values in, as you know. So that's one thing that can be helpful. The other thing is this guy right here, this column. Most of the CSV files that you guys download, I think, will have a headers column here where it tells you the title of the column itself. This is not column data, right? This is just a name for each of these columns. And when you're using the import wizard in MySQL Workbench, it assumes that there is one of these. And if there isn't one, then it takes this to be the heading name, which of course it's not. This is actual data that I want to import. And so this stuff will be deleted from the import. Now, just so you know, if you're typing in MySQL commands directly instead of using the import wizard, then you can specify whether or not you've got a headings row. You can tell it to ignore a certain row. I can't remember off the top of my head because I always use this import thing. But let's see, gosh, what is it? It is, I can't remember. Basically, ignore. Okay, so you can tell it to ignore and then a certain integer and lines. So if you want it to ignore this line, the first thing you say ignore 1 lines, and if you don't have a heading, then you can tell it to ignore 0 lines. So anyway, you can do it if you're doing the inline import in MySQL, but I don't know of a way to do it in the import wizard on MySQL Workbench. So this is all to say, if you do not have a headings, if it looks like this, then go ahead and put one in. You can just select the top row and then right click and then a certain rows above, and then just name them whatever you want to. It doesn't really matter what you call these because you'll be creating your own column names, of course, when you create your database table. So that's stuff to just watch out for. Now, the other thing to watch out for is the second thing I had you guys do, which is to look for places where you might be non-conformant with the first 3 normal forms of database design. And especially you want to watch out for the first normal form, which is that you cannot have non-scalar data, right? You can't have collections of data. You can't have 2 different pieces of data in the same field. And that does happen quite a bit in these. For instance, on this column right here, I've got like entire names, right? Instead of having first name and last name be in different fields. I also have, salutations, such as Mrs. and Ms. and Professor even and stuff like that. I've also got like MD and DDS over here. Like I've got all kinds of stuff in here. I do not want all that stuff together. I want it to be separate so that I can treat them separately. So I'll just show a real quick splitting text into columns here. You can do this again in Microsoft Excel or in LibreOffice here. I think that in Microsoft Excel, I believe you go to the Home tab and then there's a text to columns button somewhere over here. Just look for it. And then if you're in LibreOffice here, it's going to be under menu items. So first off, no matter which app you're in, first thing you want to do is go to the right of that column and just insert a few columns. I don't know why, but both of these apps don't seem to have an option when you split this up to create new columns as it's doing it. It just wants to overwrite stuff that's already there. So that's kind of, there must be a way to do it. I just don't know how. So anyway, I just make a few columns here just to make sure that it's not going to like destroy my other data over here. And I'm going to select this column here, and then in LibreOffice, I'm going to do, first of all, before splitting it into columns, I'm going to do a find and replace. And so this is also in Microsoft Excel. Let's see, how do you do the find and replace in Microsoft Excel? It's going to be, this is going to be under the Home tab, find and select button, and then replace. And then in Calc, you do it here under the Edit menu. So Edit, and then find and replace in here. And I'm just going to get rid of the salutations first. So I see right at the top, I'm lucky I see Mrs. Okay, that lets me know that I might need to get rid of that stuff. So I'm going to type in Mrs. here, matching it exactly, and I'm not going to forget to put the space, right? I want to get rid of that space at the beginning there too. Replace it with nothing, and then do a replace all. And let me know, hey, I got rid of one of those. Okay, cool. When result found, close, and it got rid of that. So now I'm going to put in everything else that I can think of. Now, of course, I can easily see, this is only 10 rows, so I know that there's no Mr. But if this were a large piece of data, then I might not know that. So I'm going to type in Mr. dot space and make sure there's one space at the end again. And there's a weird thing in LibreOffice that you have to go in and select the column again. You don't have to do that in Excel, but in LibreOffice, kind of irritating that you have to do that, but it's a free app, what the heck. Okay, so it's letting me, okay, we didn't find Mr. anywhere. So let's try Ms. I'm just going to click in here again, Ms. space, and then replace all, and it says, hey, I found one of those too. And just do a quick glance through the column if you can, because I would never have guessed that prof would be in here. So I'm going to select the column again, and oops, so prof dot space, don't forget the space, replace all, and I found a couple of those, and so on. So just kind of get rid of all that junk. I'm not going to worry about MD and DDS. I just really wanted to get rid of this stuff at the beginning here. Click close when you're done with that. Make sure the column is selected here. Okay, so now what we want to do is get this split into different columns on the space. I don't care much if it throws an extra column for MD and DDS. I'll just delete that stuff after it's created it. So this is going to be in the Home tab. No, I'm sorry, in Excel this is under the Data tab. I keep getting this two mixed up. Data tab, and then there's a text to columns button, and you can choose the delimiters. But here in LibreOffice, you're going to go to the Data menu, and somewhere in here is text columns. There it is. So what you got to do is you got to tell it what the delimiter is again. The separator options is called. So I wanted to take every space that it finds in here and break the column into two columns where it finds that. So I'm going to select space here. And it gives me a little preview down here of what it's going to look like. I click OK, and bam, it does it for me. So just give this a new name. Again, it doesn't matter what you call it, really. Just give it some kind of name here so that you know what they are when you're importing into MySQL. This is the last name, and then these extra columns over here. We can go ahead and delete those, including the one that had like MD and DDS and that stuff in. And now things are looking good. Now, I mean, you can do a glance through for other kinds of normal forms too. Just these are a little bit more abstract, but just look for any field here that relies on something other than your primary key. I know I don't have any numbers in here, but just imagine that I did. And you know, is Farrell dependent on something other than the primary key? No. Is the number of pages dependent on something other than the primary key? No. So this is all fine, but it's the first normal form that you really got to watch out for. Watch for things like that. So the example of, I think there was one, Chris's maybe, where it did like card number or something, 1 of 147 and 2 of 147. Well, you could do the split text into columns here, but then choose other and type in the space of space instead of just a simple space, and it would break it up by that. Whoever has that, if it was Chris or somebody else, if you have trouble getting that done, let me know. We'll work on it together. Okay, so I think that I've got what I need here. I'm going to go ahead and save it. Cool. And that's it about preparing the data. So I'll make another quick recording about actually creating the database and tables here.